It's a crazy place. It's weird. I hate the heat.
Yeah.
So tell me, Kerry. Um, so I can't see you. So
I look like crap, so I just have my little thing up.
um, yeah. So what's happening with you now? First. How about just introduce yourself, because the idea here is to get this out to people who aren't aware of, what's happening, who you are, what you're doing, all that sort of thing, to have a wider audience, to expand out, and not just like the same people in the cannabis community that we all know and everybody sees each other and it's like, oh yeah,
Same thing every
right,
day.
right. So if we
I
can,
feel you.
yeah, so just introduce yourself, and then you know just, just tell me what's going on.
Okay. My name is Kerry Cannon. I am co-director of the International Women's Cannabis Coalition, and I also advocate for Washington State federal plant prisoner Lance Floor's release. Um, I pretty much dubbed myself I'm the nobody who decided to be the somebody to do something about it. And that something was to help bring greater public awareness to Washington State federal plant prisoner Lance Floor's case, and to, rally the troops to help support his release.
So what were you doing before Lance Glory? You say you were the nobody who's decided to be somebody and do something about it. But you were doing things before that, right?
I've been with the International Women's Cannabis Coalition for a number of years since the founding. I was the California chapter leader that started the chapter there, took over Washington State when I moved up here 5 years ago, as there was no chapter leader. When I was back in Southern California, I pretty much led the efforts in Apple Valley to first to stop and then to try to overturn the ban on medical dispensaries there, which unfortunately didn't happen. We didn't have enough public support for that.
It seems to be a problem. A lot of times people don't want to get out and do anything. Even if they support it, they'll just still sit at home.
True. I had so many people that, I'd be like, I need you to come to this council meeting or make these phone calls, write a letter, come to this protest. And they'd be like, I support it, but you got this. And one person can't do it.
Right. Yeah, it's impossible. But you are doing things now that one person can do and anybody can do, right? And
Absolutely.
if they decided that they wanted to follow along and do the same kinds of things, that would be pretty easy for them to replicate, wouldn't it?
Very easy. And using just simple, easy methods and things that most of us have access to. Certainly anybody who'll be watching this, your phone, your social media, a piece of paper, a pen to write a sign, a couple minutes of your time to make a phone call or email. It can make a huge difference.
And so what kind of things are you doing? So say you make a sign. So what do you do with your sign? Say you make a sign that says freelance galore, because you mentioned Lance.
Mm-hmm.
So um, freelance, what would somebody do? If they got a sign, what should they do with their sign?
Well, I would recommend taking a photo of themselves, a selfie, or have somebody else take their photo of them holding that sign, and then uploading that sign to social media. Maybe include a call to action that I have out there, or emailing the White House in support of his pending clemency petition, or just an article about his injustice, or just the fact that he's serving a 10-year federal prison sentence for legal medical cannabis in Washington State. Those photos, what I do with them is I turn them into photo collages, and I work pretty closely with Lance's mother, Tracy. We send those collages to Lance in prison so he knows he has support, he's not forgotten. And we also send them to the White House in support of this pending clemency petition.
And that's really important for somebody in prison to get that sort of thing, isn't it?
Very much so. It helps lift their spirits, let them know that they're, important, that they still matter. It's very sad. I know in his case and many people's cases who are incarcerated, it's, they're gone, out of sight, out of mind, and where are their friends?
Right. Yeah, that can be a big uplifting experience for somebody who's treated like a number in a cage to have their humanity reaffirmed and know that people do love them and care about them. So tell us about Lance Glore. Who is Lance Glore and what happened with Lance Glore?
Lance Glore, first I'd like to point out to people that I have never met Lance in person. I've never heard his voice. When I started advocating for him, we had never had any contact. His injustice, it bothered me, and I began working in the legal recreational market of cannabis here in Washington State. And just about every day I'd be at work, and at some point it would pop in my head, I'm doing the same thing that Lance was, and I'm getting paid for it and going home every night, and he's in a prison cell. What Lance is guilty of is being involved in medical marijuana in Washington State and following the state law. The state had went after Lance to try to find something to prosecute him for, found nothing. They had a joint task force that was state and fed, and when the state, found they had nothing to charge Lance with, they handed evidence over to the feds to handle it.
Yeah. And what was the purpose of them going after him in the first place?
Well, this was back in 2011 or 12, and at that time there was a bunch of federal raids going on across many medical legal states at that time. And Lance, just for whatever reason I'm unsure of, was on their radar and they targeted him.
Yeah. And he's got 10 years and he was arrested in what year?
2012 or 13.
So he's got, what has he got, 2 years left?
Oh no, he started his sentence 2015, I believe, and he's on year 4 right now.
He's what?
He's on year 4 right now.
Year 4. Wow. First they drag you years through the court system before they even sentence you, and then they put you away. So they really steal so many more years of your life. Steal your resources, destroy your family. And that's what they call justice in America.
Right.
Yeah. It's so ridiculous.
Very. The sad part is Lance was, when he was, after he was sentenced, he asked if he could, turn himself in and begin his sentence after his daughter, his only child's high school graduation. And they refused to let him go to her graduation. He turned himself in, I think it was about a week before that. And he's since missed her college graduation this year.
Yeah. So when you're out doing this stuff and you know about these stories, how does it make you feel?
Oh, it makes me feel a lot of things. I'm blessed I've never been in this situation of having to deal with this kind of injustice, either for myself or a family member or even a close friend. But my heart goes out to these families who, you know, I read their stories on social media and hear about what they go through, and it just, it's heartbreaking, and it's hard to imagine in this country that's supposed to be the land of the free that people are actually being thrown in cages, families are being torn apart over a plant that heals. It's just complete madness.
Yeah. People used I mean, in America, I mean, the government and all the propaganda coming from them, they used to point the fingers a lot and mock Russia because Russia would have bread lines, or because, you know, they had people in gulags in Siberia for being political dissidents. But they're doing the exact same thing here.
Absolutely. It's kind of mind-boggling to see people defend like the injustices on the hands of the government and not have learned a thing from history.
Right. They don't learn anything, and they don't really care to learn anything, it seems like to me a lot.
Right. And it's just going to get repeated. And then people, you know, are going to wonder, how did we get here?
Yeah. And the rest of us trying to figure out a way to get out of it.
Yeah.
So, so how can, is there an address people can write to and support Lance and send him a card or something? And how should they make their voices heard, if they want to get involved, if they want to do something to help out and do something for Lance? What can they do in the immediate, like they could just do it right now? If they were listening, they could just sit down and do something. What could they do?
There's a couple things they could do. If they're on Twitter, they could get on there and compose a tweet. I support the pending clemency of Lance Glore. It's Gloor, inmate number 44270-086. Clemency case number 44. I'm sorry, I did not write that down right.
It's
You're going to
okay.
edit this?
You'll get it. Just that doesn't
They
really.
can check out freelanceglore.com for more information. Emailing the White House is important too, just something as simple as I support the pending clemency of Lance Glore.
And do you have an email for them at the White House?
I do. It's whitehouse.gov/contact. They can also contact the clemency attorney's office, and that's justice.gov/contact-US.
And I'll try and put all those links in when I put this up on YouTube, so that those links will be in the description, so people can see those. So
Thank you.
yeah,
I wrote down his inmate number instead of the clemency case number. So that's my bad.
that's okay. We'll get it figured out and we'll put it there.
Okay.
So who else? Who else is out there that's got your attention, and somebody that you're helping to advocate for?
Peggy Kimmel and Glenn Keeling in Mercer County, Ohio. They're a husband and wife who, on Halloween night 2017, did a good deed of gifting another patient and friend in need 2 grams of cannabis oil, which led to law enforcement showing up at their house later that night and arresting Glenn.
And how did that happen? I mean, they gave their friend some oil, and so did this person that they gave it to get arrested? Or what happened there? What was that? How did the cops know to show up at their house?
Oh, the cops have been surveilling them. Glenn, he's kind of a pioneer with activism in his area. He had ran for mayor as an open medical marijuana patient and pro-cannabis candidate. He'd also led the first global marijuana march in their area. started a normal chapter and then a human solution chapter. And they were, this was all political. They were being targeted. So the police were surveilling them because they claimed they had a lot of traffic coming and going from their home. What the law enforcement didn't know is they're both ministers, and they did a lot of marriage counseling and church type stuff out of their home. So people, they knew they could show up if they needed help, someone to talk to, something to eat. They could come there and they'd be welcome to be helped. So after they gave their friend the cannabis oil, there was an officer down the road watching, and he pulled him over and immediately said he smelled marijuana and asked where he got it from. And the guy said, from Glenn.
Thanks, friend.
Nice friend.
Yeah. Yeah, the old I smell marijuana. And every time I hear that, I think, well, it must be your breath blowing back in your face there. 'Cause I mean,
Someone should use that.
yeah, that's what I'm tempted to do. It's like, well, maybe if you didn't smoke in your car, you wouldn't smell it.
Right.
Fucking guys. It's just a bullshit. They're bullshit.
Cop out. Yeah.
So they got arrested.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? And then what happened with them?
And then their family's nightmare began. I mean, on Halloween night, it was just Glenn that got arrested, and eventually Peggy got arrested as well. Their case is historic in a way that they're the first people in their state who were bonded out.
Did what?
They were their bond paperwork. The judge allowed them to continue consuming medical cannabis.
Okay.
So they're facing prosecution for cannabis while they're legally allowed to use it while the case is ongoing.
Okay.
This has been going on since, like I said, Halloween night 2017. They were brought up on so many different charges, one being child endangerment because they have a teenage daughter in the home. CPS, did their job. They investigated, looked into it. They closed the case in less than 30 days and determined that their daughter was safest in their home and left her there.
Well, that's good because typically things usually go the other way.
Typically, yeah. The crazy part is they're still facing the child endangerment charges.
Really? Even
Many years. Yep.
Oh my God.
And so not too long ago, they made a rough decision to take a plea deal because this case has been dragging on. It's literally killing Peggy, the stress and everything. She has MS and some other health conditions, and her health is massively declining. And they've got a sentencing coming up on the 27th of this month.
The 27th of this month, they're going to be sentenced, and today is the 22nd, so in 5 days.
Yes.
5 days they're going to be sentenced.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the sentences they're looking at? Do we know?
Yeah, I know. Peggy's facing 84 months with a driver's license suspension of up to 10 years and a $17,000 max fine with probation.
84 months. How many years is 84 months?
Are you doing the math?
How many years is 84 months? I'll just ask Siri.
7 years.
7 years. So it's only 84 months. Yeah, 7 years plus, what'd you say, $13,000 or $17,000?
$17,000 in fines.
$17,000, 7 years, 10 years of having your driver's license removed, and that's a deal.
Yeah, supposedly.
And then what about Ken? What's he facing?
Glenn is facing 90 months, 10 years driver's license suspension, and $37,000 in fines.
How many?
Huh?
How many months?
90.
90.
So how many years is that?
Please. How many years is 90 months?
Answer is 7.5 years.
7.5 years. So they
Madness.
could both be in prison for, and how old is their teenager?
I believe she's 16 now.
So she's 16. So here comes the government. Let's take the parents of the 16-year-old girl and put them in prison, both of them, the father and the mother, even after their child protective services concluded that there was no threat and that they were safe in the home, best off with the parents. But here comes the government. We're going to put you in prison, both of you, for 7+ years. So she's 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. She'd be 23 by the time her parents got out of prison. And so what's
Crazy.
a 16-year-old supposed to do? Go live with somebody else?
It's probably what they're thinking.
Yeah.
Actually, with Peggy, though, they're asking for probation, and for Glenn, the prosecutor's asking for max punishment and for that to be prison time.
The prosecutor, what do they want with her? They only want to put her on probation?
Yes, they've kind of used Peggy through this whole thing as leverage because they've really wanted Glenn to make an example out of him because it's all politically motivated. I've spoken with Peggy's lawyer on the phone, and he confirmed that my suspicion that it was all politically motivated. He said, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
This county of Mercer County, Ohio is very corrupt. I've been directed to websites on county corruption there, and they've been caught stacking juries and letting pedophiles get off and all kinds of crazy stuff. And they're wasting so much time and money and ruining this family over doing something compassionate. It boggles my mind.
Yeah, and it's, and really, it's something that never should have been illegal in the first place. It was all
Right.
a criminal scheme from the beginning, from the onset. And all this nonsense that they come up with, oh, you did this with weed, or you had pot and you sold, or you manufactured it, or you were, going to use this for some other unauthorized reason that we haven't given you permission for because we're your lords and masters and your rulers and you need to do what we tell you to do. While at the same time, them are busy with their nonsense and their corruption and their schemes and their scams. And like you said, letting all the POWs go. But then we find out that there are judges out there that were arrested. A judge that was, what was he doing? He was feeding kids into jails or some shit. And what was that judge doing? He was, God, I'd have to look it up. But anyway, and they let him out of fucking prison. They go, oh, let's let this judge out. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't think I've heard about that one.
Oh my God, I think I'll have to look that up. But yeah, but then all in the news is all these pedo freaks and all this shit that they're doing, and we see that they get off like with a couple years.
If that.
Yeah, if that, or they get probation, they get sent home. Chris Martin said to me, he goes, they let them people go like that because they know that they'll reoffend. And so they can bring them back in, and then they can let them out, and they'll reoffend, and they keep going in and out, getting in and out, in and out. And I don't know why, because that to me is like, okay, well, do they make more money if they go in and out? I'm not sure what the reason for that would be. But he said they want to keep the pot prisoners in there for a long time because they don't typically reoffend once they get out. They're like, no, fuck that shit. And they're like, you're not going to see them again. So they want to keep them in there longer.
I've also heard that the plant prisoners, while they're incarcerated, they're like ideal inmates. These aren't criminals. These are just people who are victims of unjust laws. So they aren't in there causing any problems, and usually cooperative and keeping to themselves and trying to better themselves in there.
So it makes their little prison run that much easier. So they can go, oh, we've got all these soft prisoners in here that don't really bother us. and we can just collect our money and we don't have a lot of headache.
Right. Or make their jobs easier.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, these pedophiles, I mean, they have victims for their crimes, and
yeah,
people who are affected by that, they get a life sentence.
right. I just saw an article today that there was a ring of those bastards down in Australia that just got busted, and they saved like 14 kids away from these.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So, you know, when you hear these stories and then these kids and they come out and then it's like, um, um, what happens to the kids after? You know, what kind of help are they getting after the fact? Because now they're psychologically, spiritually, physically, emotionally damaged. They
Right.
great trauma. And so what's happening? Do these kids get any kind of, you know, any kind of psychological help, spiritual help? What kind of recovery do they get? Because now they've got that shit built into them, and the chances that they're going to go out and do something is vastly increased. So,
Absolutely. And I don't think most of, I don't, it's not really common knowledge that there's been a lot of studies done on this topic and how it affects people for the rest of their lives who are victims, and that there is no rehabilitating these kind of monsters. Let's call them what they are. And they should never be let back out into society.
right, the ones, yeah, the adults that are doing that shit. But I was thinking about the kids, you know,
Yeah.
and how they can recover and how they can get put back on a normal life, because it's just like, you know, they're never going to have a fucking normal life.
No, never. And it's, someone I care about has been a victim of that, and she went to counseling, which didn't seem to do anything. At one point, was admitted to a mental health hospital because she had made a suicide threat, told a friend, and it got back to her parents, and then was just abused in the mental hospital where she was sent for help.
Jesus.
Drugged her up, and staff's abusing, all these kids there who just really need some love and help, and all they're doing is bringing more trauma upon them. It's just madness. It's not. Is there any? I don't even know if the professionals have a good way of helping people who've been victims.
I'm sure there are. I'm sure that there are people who have success with it. I think it's I think it's probably true, but I also think that there are probably a lot that just, you know, don't have experience, and they might get somebody into their practice and they might try and do something, but they really don't have the, you know, the experience to help.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's just, you know, the kids, those kids, I mean, I think they would probably do well if they were getting therapy, probably with psilocybin and cannabis would probably help. But instead, the cannabis prisoners, the cannabis people who want to help are the ones who are turned into pariahs, and all these freaks, they're just allowed to continue on their way. And that tells me something about society. That tells me something about the system, because the
Yep.
system protects itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the system protects what it wants to see continue.
Absolutely. Well, on a positive note, with Peggy and Glenn's case, we were collecting letters on their behalf written to the judge who's presiding over this case, asking for him to sentence with leniency and mercy. That was a public call to action. There were over 110 letters received. So those will be turned into the judge. And also the other morning, Peggy let me know that their probation officer, when they took the deal, they had a certain date where they were required to go check in with probation office and get that processing started. They told their probation officer about the signs and the photos that I had collected of people on their behalf, the same I have with Lance Glore. And he requested that all of those photos be sent to him, as well as the petition I started, so he could personally pass those along to the judge. And that 2 days ago, I emailed him all of those and heard back from him. And he just, from what Peggy said, he thinks it's all great and amazing, and he's blown away. And hopefully that will really help get across the judge how many people do care, how many people aren't turning a blind eye to this injustice, and that, we're just not going to sit back and watch this happen anymore.
Right. And so if somebody's listening and they want to write or they want to call, where should they write and where should they call?
For Peggy and Glenn, I'm not sure at this point, since we're kind of, they've collected all the letters and they've turned them into their attorneys today, so it's kind of a little late for that. The deal's been made, so the prosecutor contacting him, I don't know if that will do any good at this point. So I think just wait for an update on what happens at sentencing. And I talked to Peggy and Glenn and let them know, like, if, we're not done with this, regardless of what happens, we're not done fighting for you guys and your family.
Right.
We will, the next step is the governor needs to pardon them.
Is 7 years the maximum they're throwing? 7.5 years the maximum for him, or is that the minimum?
That's the maximum.
That's the maximum. So it's feasible that he could get less.
Yes, it's possible that the judge, he has full discretion on sentencing. He could give them both probation if he decides to.
And
which is what we're hoping.
yeah. And so did they have prior histories of arrests and all that sort of thing?
Squeaky clean records, nothing.
So they were clean. They had nothing. They got bound up in this nonsense. And so throwing the maximum at them would really be over the top.
Yes. And what I believe is the prosecutor's trying to send a message to everybody in that county that of what he will and will not allow, regardless of what the law is. I did quite a bit of research into Ohio medical cannabis laws, and the max that should have happened, and this case should have been done and over with years ago, he should have got a small fine of $250 max.
Funny how the government can just ignore its own laws.
Exactly. He's going above and beyond to make an example out of this family and to, in my opinion, declare himself supreme ruler.
Yeah. And was their lawyer, was he an actual lawyer, or was he appointed by the court, or?
Peggy and Glenn have two different lawyers. Glenn has a court appointed and Peggy has a private attorney.
Mm.
Unfortunately, her attorney hasn't done very much to fight for her.
Really?
Yeah, both attorneys have told Peggy and Glenn that they've got to save face for the prosecutor in this case. And her attorney, when I spoke with him on the phone, he was very excited about the activism that I had going on their behalf. And, because I'm out here fighting, he can do his job and save face for the prosecutor, which makes no sense. She paid him $15,000 and.
Yeah, he's supposed to be working for her. What does save face with the prosecutor mean? What is that?
Serious.
What is that supposed to mean?
That's a good question. Make him not look bad, like he was in the wrong. And this is not these aren't the first people who've been involved in a cannabis case that I've heard this from.
So lawyer more worried about his own ego and his own standing to bother to help the people that are putting money in his pocket.
Right.
Wow.
One thing I've discovered in my research, I'm kind of a nerd, and I'd rather like research and learn new things than watch TV. So I started doing some research into like attorneys and the bar association, and I discovered that bar associated attorneys, they are officers of the court.
Right.
So yeah, they're going to do what's best for the court, not their client necessarily.
Yeah, they serve the court. They don't serve the person.
Right.
They're just there to make deals and make everything, smooth it over the best they can, and then go out with drinks with the judge and the prosecutor afterwards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's so crazy. I served on a jury one time, and it was really weird for me to see the prosecutor and the defense attorney being all buddy-buddy in the hallway.
Yeah.
It was weird.
The American justice system.
Yes.
Oh my God. It's so. Okay, so in 5 days, Glenn and what's her name?
Peggy.
Peggy Sue, right?
Yes.
Glenn and Peggy will be sentenced in 5 days. And so after that, if he goes to prison for any length of time, people are going to want to know how they can, again, support him while he's behind bars. And encouraged his family afterwards, because that's going to be a devastating blow for them.
Absolutely. Glenn's the breadwinner, and he's also helping Peggy's mom, who lost her husband earlier this year, financially. He's also Peggy's caregiver, as well as his mother-in-law's caregiver. A couple nights ago, their 16-year-old daughter reached out to me through a messenger, and it was close to midnight Ohio time, about 9 o'clock my time. And she couldn't sleep. She was worried, and she sent me a couple messages, and I decided, okay, probably this would be better have a phone call than a text message conversation. And so she called me, and this poor girl, she's 16 years old, getting ready to start her sophomore year of high school. And her worries are how her mom will get to her doctor's appointment if her dad's incarcerated. She only has a driver's permit. So if Peggy loses her, if her license gets suspended, she couldn't legally drive her mom unless they're able to find another adult to be in the car with them. And then she's got to be at school. And Peggy's got many health conditions. She's at the doctor all the time. She gets infusions for her MS, among other things. I mean, tomorrow morning she has surgery a few days before their sentencing. So this little girl's, she's lying awake at night, can't sleep, thinking about this stuff, and then thinking about her niece, I think she's 2 years old now, who's very bonded with Glenn, about how that's going to, affect her little baby niece if her grandpa goes off to prison.
Yeah. Yeah. Leave it up to the state to break families up as much as possible.
Right. And she's also worried about, how she's going to have school supplies and, just everything that she's going to need to do to step up to help her family.
Yeah. Jeez.
But there is a GoFundMe out there because they are going to need some help. I mean, this has cost them a lot of money, so we'll get you that link to include.
Okay, good.
And then maybe we can do a update video after sentencing, and
Absolutely.
okay, and then we can, put out those call to actions and what we're going to do moving forward to help them, because I'm not going to stop helping them until this is done.
Right.
And again, these are people that I've never met in person. How I found out about them is in a Facebook group, the International Cannabis Patients Wall. Peggy was posting there asking for help, so I felt inspired to reach out to her, learn a little bit about them and their story, and see what I could do. And This has been a little over 2 years now. I asked both Peggy and Glenn what this public support has meant to them and their family. Glenn said it's meant a lot. It's shown people really care and they don't feel so alone. Peggy said the public support means a lot to us. It helps it, keeps it, it's kept us going for 2 years and 9 months.
Wow. Yeah, just imagine if you had nobody supporting you. That would be really rough. That would,
Right.
and there's so many out there that we don't even know all their names. We don't even know who they all are. This
We don't
happens
even know how many,
every day in America.
we don't even know the for sure number of people who were locked up for cannabis in this country.
Right. And I'm pretty sure that the numbers are very, very high.
Oh, I'm positive of it. I mean, even with legalization, so-called legalization spreading across the country, we have more cannabis arrests than ever.
Right.
And I believe that the government hid that information from us, like within the last year or so, of not publicly reporting the exact number of cannabis arrests.
Yeah. Yeah.
That says something.
Yeah, it does. It says a lot. They hide in the shadows like cockroaches. They send out their armed thugs to brutalize and harm people because of a plant, a freaking plant that God put on the earth, in my perspective, to bless humanity, to give us a natural resource, because there's so many things that can be done with that plant. And this nonsense that all of a sudden certain men can come along and decide, you know what, we should kill people because of this plant. We should rob people because of this plant. We should kidnap and we should cage people because of this plant. It's like, wait, what does that have to do with freedom? Where is freedom in any of that? Non-existent.
Non-existent.
Oh my God. So I wanted to ask you about you. You met someone at a rest stop not too long ago,
I
and
did.
yeah, and she was, and there was some conversation about cannabis or something, and that she got arrested. I'm not exactly sure on all the details. So you want to? Did you have
Yeah, I'll
someone
go
else
over
you
that
want to
story.
talk about? But I wanted to hear about that one too. But
Okay. It was when I was on Stacy Tice's CANNABIS. We were trying to leave Washington State to head down to Arizona, and there was a mechanical problem, so we were stuck at a rest stop for 2 days while that was getting repaired. So I was walking, around the rest stop, and I noticed two females and a man outside their vehicle, and on their bumper sticker their bumper sticker said prohibition still doesn't work. So I was like, I have to say something, at least give them props for their sticker or something. So I stopped and we talked for a little bit, and just talking about prohibition and whatnot. And then I had a freelance glory sign that I was traveling around with and taking people's pictures with, and asked them if they'd participate, and without hesitation, they did. We didn't have a real long conversation, but long enough for me, like to get a feel of what kind of person she was. And so obviously she was compassionate. You need help getting this person free from prison for a plant. She was all about it. Let's end prohibition. She knew, she was educated on the subject, and she was all about it. And then they came by, and I let them know about the cannabis that was not visible from their part of the parking lot. So they came by at some point to check it out and talked to all of us, and they started following the group on Facebook. Well, I hadn't heard from her until maybe like 2 weeks ago, and she reminded me who she was and where we met at. I meet a lot of people, so sometimes it's kind of hard just to remember a name. They have to give me a little bit something so it sticks out.
Right.
And she told me about an experience she had after we had met. She had just gotten to Colorado. She was checking it out, considering moving there and taking a job there. And she was raped. So immediately, this was on her day 4 in Colorado. She had a friend with her. They quickly gathered all of her belongings, threw them in her car, and started driving to South Dakota, where she has a home with her husband she's separated from, has family and friends there that she trusts who are law enforcement and military, and she knew would help keep her safe and help walk her through, the proper ways of dealing with this with law enforcement. On her way to North Dakota, her and her friend stopped in South Dakota, just off the side of the highway for a moment. There was a beautiful sunset, and they wanted to take a picture of it. While they were stopped, a state trooper pulled up to see if they were okay. They let him know, like, yeah, we're fine. We're just taking a picture. And then immediately, he must have smelled marijuana. He asked, who's got the marijuana? And then they were asked to step out of the vehicle, which they did. An officer searched their car. Another one showed up. Jennifer reported the rape to one of the officers while the other officer was looking through her car. She let them know, she didn't know exactly what she had in there because she just tossed everything in there to get away from a traumatic experience she just had. So she was arrested and taken to the hospital, where the cops had, let hospital staff know to process a rape kit and also to do a urinalysis for drugs. The hospital didn't have any rape kits they could use. Every single rape kit they had in the hospital was expired.
So they didn't have rape kits, but I bet they had drug test kits.
Oh, they absolutely did. What's pretty crazy is that while they're scrambling, trying to locate a hospital nearby that has a rape kit they can use, the nurse had Jennifer do a UA, which meant wiping her vagina in a manner that would sterilize it for the UA, but that also would potentially destroy evidence for the rape kit. And when she brought it to the nurse's attention, she said, yeah, it seems weird to me, but that's what I was told to do. That's what we have to do.
Hold on, I gotta get a kitty cat out of there. Get down. Yeah. So she got arrested for how much weed did they find?
Oh, just a couple grams
So they
of
found
flour and some oil.
a couple little buds and some oil.
And then some, she got charged for paraphernalia. She had a bong, a nectar collector, and some empty packaging that she was saving to recycle.
Okay.
So it was like possession charges, and then the paraphernalia, and then even like a conspiracy to distribute or something like that.
Great. See, they always come up with these weird freaking things. Oh, we'll just throw this on there. We'll throw that on there. Just make up any kind of shit, and then all of a sudden you have all these charges just because some fucking cops decided to make up stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You have to go through this idea. It's like, oh well, now what? And then in the courts now, something they even did here in Arizona. It's to the point where you have to prove you're innocent rather than them proving you're guilty.
What kind of awkward shit is that?
Yeah, it's some backwards fucking shit, that's for sure.
I mean, that should have everybody like, what the fuck? We need to, not be sitting on our couches in front of our TV. We need to do something about this.
So are you going to be keeping up with this story of these women?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Jennifer had court on Monday. They dismissed 2 of her charges. She still has 1 remaining charge, which could land her either a fine or 2 years in federal prison.
Federal prison?
Yes, which I'm trying to understand because these are state charges and her court date was in a state courthouse. So I'm hoping that her lawyer will contact me to help me understand. And I encouraged her, I always encourage people, let your attorneys know that I'm helping you and advocating for you. Because I, just want to be on the same page. Don't want to cause anybody any harm. My calls to action are never done without the people or their families' consent and knowledge of it. If they think an idea is not good or is too far or harmful or riskful, then they say, no, I won't do it.
So who charged her with federal crimes?
That's the part I'm trying to figure out. I can't wrap my head around that or make sense of it. So I'm hoping I get some information that will help me figure out what's going on.
Like interstate transportation of a narcotic or interstate transportation of a controlled substance or some kind of shit nonsense like that.
It's got to be something like that because she was, she let them know that she was fleeing Colorado on her way to North Dakota. So.
Right.
And what people can do to help her is to contact the prosecuting attorney, which in South Dakota is known as the state's attorney. His name is Mark Allen Reedstrom. His phone number is 605-432-7502. Or you can email him, Mark at ASHREEDSTROM and leave a polite message, even something as simple as drop all charges against Jennifer Turdost.
Okay, and we'll have to get the spelling of her name and all this information, and we'll put that in the links below as well.
Okay.
So you have some crafts that you make, but we can't see them. I'd like people to be able to see them, but do you have an Etsy or do you have a website?
I do have an Etsy. It's etsy.com/shop/PNW Canna Creations.
PNW Canna Creations.
Yes. Don't you have some hot pads that I've sewn?
I do. They're on my bus. They're not here, or I'd show them.
What do you think of them?
I like them. I like them a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you doing that.
And I can send you some pictures you can include in this.
I want you to send me a mask.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I want. I don't know if it's hard to make a little what do you call those things?
A stencil?
Stencil. Yeah. And then I'll just say, hey, can you make this a stencil and whatever words, and then you can tell me if you can or not.
Okay.
Because if I'm going to have to walk into a store, and I don't mind. I mean, if it's their shop, it's their rules, whatever. So what? If I have to go in a store and put on a mask, at least if I do it, at least I want to have something that's out there, instead of just walking around with one of these fucking, these medical face masks, whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'd like to do this again, if you're down for it at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know there's more prisoners we could talk about and more people that everyone needs to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, I mean, you just met these people, these women at a rest stop.
Right.
Just a few weeks later, they're being charged with federal freaking crimes for pot. I mean, how random is that? that's just like so crazy. And this shit happens day in, day out.
All the time.
Yeah, and people are just not aware. You know, I
They're not,
I,
yeah.
I kind of like to see it's like maybe the only way for us to get justice is if we were the ones out there, you know, doing the riots. If we were the ones out there, you know, and we try to fill the streets, and we've had marches, and we've had protests, and we've had all these sorts of things, but it seems like so many people just go, oh, that's just pot, and then they just stay home because it's not like they don't think about how many, you know, people are negatively affected by the drug war and what the drug war really is and what it really does to people.
Right. Or even like the history of cannabis prohibition. I think so many forget like these unjust laws were based on a conspiracy. A conspiracy to take away our freedoms, to change how we treat our medical system. The list goes on and on and on, based on a conspiracy. So, like, why the fuck aren't we standing up and saying, repeal all cannabis laws, deschedule? Like, you're not, the plant's none of the government's fucking business or what people do with it.
Right. All those laws are built around racist propaganda and nonsense. And the government just totally got away with it back then because they were able to, because there was no mass communications like the internet and all that sort of thing. And most people weren't, I mean, just because there was newspapers and radio and things like that doesn't mean that everybody was paying attention to the stories. And so it probably didn't get a lot of airplay. It probably didn't get a lot, but you know, except for like movies and theaters and just freak people out in small towns or whatever with Reefer Madness propaganda films. I mean, I remember seeing those things as a kid and thinking, I never thought that it was the weed that was bad. I thought it was just a stupid movie.
Uh-huh.
That was my reaction to those things. I was like, God, this is stupid. It's like, fuck.
Yeah, it seems
How can
ridiculous
anybody
if
be
that's
so
what
dumb?
scared people.
What's that?
It seems ridiculous if that's what scared people. Were these
Yeah.
movies we look at and laugh at.
Yeah, you look at them and laugh at them like, it's so fucking dumb.
And it's just crazy watching, you know, people still being driven by fear propaganda and being controlled and never questioning.
Right, right. And that's, I had somebody who is an aspiring person here, and she's tried to, and she's actually got on the ballot now to be on mayor, to be, to for mayor of Phoenix. And she told me one time, well, you gotta, essentially the words were, it's not an exact quote, but basically you have to use fear to get people motivated because otherwise they won't do anything. And I'm like, why the fuck would I have to cause people to be afraid? I'm not trying to cause people to be afraid. I don't want people to live in fear. I want
Right.
Mark and get out of their fear-based anxiety, outside of the fear-based bullshit that holds them down and restricts them and restrict their thinking and clouds their, you know, their view of life. I'd rather have things clearly and be smart and be able to fucking make decisions and process things properly rather than be bullshitted. And
I agree.
I watched their campaigns, and I watched some of these campaigns for these people around here in Arizona that pop up in my feed, and they're all fear-based. All fear-based. It's like, oh no, if we don't do this, then the evil Democrats or the evil Republicans, and they're going to do this, and our great society is going to fall apart, and blah, 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 bullshit. And it's all about fear, and they want you to be afraid of cannabis. But I think the majority of people are not afraid of cannabis. I've talked to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and I talk to people trying to get them to sign a petition, and it's sales.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to meet somebody where they are. It's like, okay, well, I want them to do this. You know, what argument is going to make the most sense for them? And I remember one lady, she was middle class, she was older, probably in her 60s. She's like, well, I don't want that stuff legal. She goes, I don't like it. I don't want it legal. I go, okay, but do you want people in prison for it? And then she stopped and she thought and she goes, you know what? No, I don't. And then she came back and she signed, right? And
Mhm.
that was a big thing for a lot of people who they don't want legal weed. But at the same time, they don't want people going to prison for it either. And, from my perspective, decriminalization is what makes the most sense because we've seen what legal lies really are, just lies, just bullshit, just ways for rich people to stuff their pockets. They don't prevent people from going to prison for pot. They don't let people out of prison for pot. So that's my rant.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. All right, Kerry. So it was good talking to you. Shoot me those links for all those people. And I'm going to be processing this over the next few days, and I'll try and get it as cut as edited as best I can into different segments so we can put those up. And
Okay, cool.
yeah, and then we can do this again another time if you're down for it.
I'm so down. Actually, I just the other day asked Tracy if her parents would be down to do like a Zoom interview that we could do a video of about how Lance's incarceration, how it's affected them. Lance was their caretaker, and he agreed. They agreed to do it. You wanna do that from your point?
Yeah, absolutely, we can do that. I'd be totally down for that if we can get them on at the same time and have you on at the same time.
I think
And
that'd be,
we can have you on with video.
yeah. I'll prepare myself better next time.
All right, Kerry. I appreciate you agreeing to do this and getting this information out because it's necessary. And
Thank you.
the more we get it out there, the more people are going to be aware of it, and the better things, hopefully, in the future will be. So,
I
thanks.
think so. Do you want me to send you the photos too of like my calls to action?
Um,
Is there a
uh,
way to
I
do
don't.
or
I don't know if. I don't know if I can. You send them to me, and I'll see if I can insert them into the video. I don't know if I can because my video editing software is like basic bullshit. That's like, so I don't really know that it's going to do me any good, but we'll try.
okay, cool.
Yeah. And if not, then, I'll take a picture of it and I'll use it the same way as I use this background in some way. So maybe if you do, if it does happen, maybe we can make one where this side is all words here. This side would all be the information over here because that's how it will show up. So
Okay.
without me getting in the way of it, you see, so I'm half in the way of this nonsense.
Yeah.
So if it's all on this one side, then it would be easier for people to read it and that sort of thing. We'll do it any way we can do it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. All right, Kerry. Well, it was good talking to you and appreciate it. And we'll see you again next time.
All right, have a good day.
Okay, you too. Bye.